Right. Thank you very much, everyone, for the introduction. I have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to dive right in. Ryan couldn't be here. He's my husband and co-director of Species, and we've been working on this project together. So I'm going to start with a little intro, a background, a little bit of ecology about sea turtles and the state of knowledge and conservation of sea turtles locally before getting into what is the Turtle Spotter Challenge all about. And sharing with you some of the preliminary results, what we've been learning so far, as well as my future plans and ideas for taking the project further. So here we have a hawksbill and green turtle, which are two of the more common species we have locally in our waters. And I like to talk about the value of sea turtles, why they're so important. They really play a key role in the life cycles of our marine ecosystems. And therefore, they are so important for our marine ecosystem health. But they are very vulnerable. And part of this locally, at least in our region, is due to really high levels of exploitation in the 17th century in particular, that really decimated our Caribbean populations. Leaving the population already vulnerable. They have estimates that the green turtle population now is 10% of what it was when Columbus arrived. And adding to that, we have characteristics of all the species that make them very vulnerable and susceptible to harvest pressure. So they take a long time to mature. They have to live a long time before they can successfully reproduce. And while they lay hundreds of eggs at a time, they overall have very slow reproductive rates with very high natural mortality of the eggs and young. So meaning from a nest of 100 eggs, only 8 or so might hatch. Only a small fraction of that might get past the fish and the birds waiting for them and get into the water. And the larger they get, the safer they are from predators. Right? They're also very highly migratory and return to their nesting beaches. So we have predictable areas sometimes that they go to, which can be exploited by people interested in hunting them. So these two pictures are local pictures as well. I don't know if most of you might know that we had a legal hunting season up until 2011. All right. So I want to walk you through a little bit about the life cycle of the hawksbill and green turtles in particular, starting with your nesting turtles in the middle left of the screen there. Your hatchlings leave the beach and disperse widely in the open ocean. So they're in what we call the pelagic zone of the sea, far from shore, right at the surface of the water is where they are found and feeding. This is where they will intermix with sargassum floats. This is where we call it the lost years because we know so little about it. It's very hard to track them at that size, and so many of them die as well. So even tagging them is not very successful to learn about that stage. When they reach about a dinner plate size, is what we say, then they make this sudden change in their habitat, and they come back to coastal waters where we see them on reefs, seagrass beds, other rocky nearshore habitats. So they have a complete change in their habitat, complete change in their diet, their whole lifestyle changes. And when they're in coastal waters, now they're living in a relatively small area, feeding. And they can stay there for years until they mature. And usually at adulthood, we see another shift where they may move again to another spot along the coast, maybe further offshore. And then finally, the females make these nesting migrations every 2 to 3 years back to where they were born, very close to where they were born. And males, we're learning a little bit more about them. They may make these migrations more often, right? And they may not be traveling as far. So the main takeaways I wanted to understand is this dispersal effect. So very far from our nesting beaches. So if you follow hatchlings from Tobago, they end up dispersed across the Caribbean in coastal waters. So the turtles we have in our coastal waters, similarly, were not born in Tobago. They are a mixed stock of individuals born at lots of different nesting grounds around the region. All right, so there's a lot of back and forth movement that we have to think about. All right. So we have a great history of sea turtle conservation locally, starting really with the Field Naturalist Club, right? This is just a sample of some of the larger, more active organizations. Nature Seekers, Grand Repair, Tour Guide Association, more recently Turtle Village Trust and Las Cuevas Association. And we have our SOS in Tobago and our government agencies as well, and linked with the wider Caribbean Sea Turtle Network that has provided advice and so on over the years. We've had great success as well with the work that's been done, particularly on our nesting beaches. So this is what I want to highlight. The efforts have really focused on our leatherbacks, on our nesting beaches. We were able with legislation to close the beaches, with training of tour guides and community work to co-manage the beaches. And that really saw a significant reduction in poaching, rapid increase in nesting numbers. Then we had end of fishery, that should be 2011, and designation as environmentally sensitive species in 2014. But while we have those successes, of course, we still have challenges, especially the other species that we know little about, especially while they are in the water, because we know quite a good bit about the nesting beach. We don't know so much what is happening in the water. All right, so we actually have 5 sea turtle species locally. The well-known leatherback, at the bottom here, next to which I have the loggerhead. And at the top left, we have the hawksbill, then the green turtle and the olive ridley turtle. So as I mentioned, they were all designated environmentally sensitive species. This came with a much higher penalty than the Fisheries Act that they were protected under before. They are all considered globally threatened as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we know so far, right? So we do know a fair bit about where most of our nesting happens. And most people are familiar with Northeast Trinidad for the high numbers of leatherbacks on Grand River, Matura, and Fishing Pond. But we have nesting quite extensively along the north and east coast of Trinidad. We have nesting even down the islands. We have nesting all around Tobago. And most of that is actually hawksbill nesting. Smaller numbers on each beach compared to the leatherback beaches, but they're scattered and cover so many beaches around both islands. And I would say what's shown in these maps are minimal, right? That's where we know for sure there have been turtles nesting in the past. I am pretty positive there is nesting in other places in between as well. Right, so I'm going to go through a little bit of each species as well. So here we have the hawksbill turtle. So as I said, nesting here locally in significant numbers, but also it's seen in the water, and more or less in any literature you find on sea turtles will say it's assumed that we find it wherever there's coral reefs, wherever there's suitable habitat, because they like to feed on sponge, on our reefs or rocky hard bottom habitats where you might find them. Then we have the green turtle. This one is only known for occasional nesting locally, but it's very abundant. We're going to see from the results how abundant they are, the young ones around the islands. And because of their diet, again, their habitat follows their food, right? They follow their food. So you're going to find them in seagrass beds, yes, but they also eat algae. And you can find algae on coral reefs. You can find algae on just rocky random shorelines or little muddy patches as well. So these, except for the hatchling here, these pictures, other pictures are also taken locally in green turtle habitat locally. So in 2007, 2008, when I was working on my PhD data, I did some 235 dives around Tobago, looking for these turtles around Tobago. Where are they? What are they doing? So the blue, the circles show you wherever I found turtles. The blue color is where I saw hawksbills. The red is where I saw green turtles. So one thing, you see blue everywhere. Hawksbills were more or less everywhere along our dive sites. Green turtles had an interesting spot over here by Mount Irvin, where they were actually more abundant than the hawksbills. And that is a reef site, no seagrass anywhere there. And Diver's Dream at the bottom left is a dive site quite far offshore, not a typical reef. It's like plateaus, rocky plateaus covered in sponge, and the hawksbills love to hide under these little ledges. All right, so this is the first work done intensively looking at these sea turtles offshore. And the sample is based on really the popular dive sites. I was working with the dive companies at the time, right? The larger circles show where the species were more abundant, where I had more frequent observations, right? On average, I used to see almost one hawksbill for every 2 dives I did, okay? Right, so a look at the foraging habitat. This is the ledges I was talking about. The top one is a green turtle at Mount Irving, right in the middle of the reef, right? So we found hawksbills really widely distributed, most abundant wherever you had a lot of sponge, and primarily juveniles is what I was seeing. Occasionally, we would get an adult hawksbill, likely passing through or temporarily here to mate and nest, but for the most part, it was juveniles. Right, then we have the olive ridley. This is considered one of the rare species. Again, these 3 pictures are local photos. This is the smallest of our turtles, considered rare. It's not found on the same kind of habitat as your hawksbills and greens. It can be found in sort of muddy bottom habitats. It can be found out in the open sea, even as adults feeding offshore. So that's one of the sort of mystery species that we know very little about. Only anecdotes really exist in any literature you find about sea turtles locally. And this is the loggerhead, considered at one point the most rare sea turtle. Again, all 5 of these photos are local, and I will talk about some of the interesting sightings we've been having. Again, they can be found on reefs, but they can also be found in your soft mud habitat. They have this really impressive skull that allows them to eat a lot of shelled organisms. Right? So knowing the effort involved to study these sea turtles intensively by scuba diving and so on, I wanted to look into citizen science as a way to more cost effectively gather information about these species that we know so little about. Because we have people in the water all the time. We have scuba divers who go regularly. We have free divers, spearfishers. We have fishermen. We have people doing that, they're down the island day trips, right? All of that effort combined, if someone would gather that information together into one database, could tell us a lot more than we know now about our distribution of sea turtles, about the threats that they're facing, and even potentially find really important critical habitat. And it's, these types of projects can really work well with fostering partnerships with people, bringing them involved and, getting just your average person involved in the science. They feel like they have some ownership, they can feel like they're contributing. Right, so we started off with an application, a mobile phone app called TURT. This was developed by a team in Honduras who were primarily working with scuba divers. So we added the map of Trinidad and Tobago to this app. It's free on Android and iOS. And we started getting a few sightings, but we also got a lot of pushback. People were like, I don't have space on my phone. I don't want to install another app. I don't want to have to learn to use another app, even though it's pretty straightforward. So we started then looking a little more widely. Well, how can we get more people engaged, actively participate? How can we make it as easy as possible for people to share with us as well? So we got some funding from these various sources. Experiment is experiment.com, a crowdsourcing platform. SPORAC is the Regional Activity Center for Specially Protected Areas and Wildlife. And we got these funds together and we engaged a marketing consultant and designer to help us, working on print materials, online ads. We've held workshops to meet with key stakeholders. We go out to the fish landing sites to survey the fishers, and we have some funds to do some habitat surveys ourselves. And we also looked at how can we incentivize reporting? Can we give little prizes, little rewards for participating actively, right? So Schreier Enterprises is the marketing consultant we work with, and they came up with the concept of the Turtle Spotter Challenge. They looked at it as a fun approach that would appeal to people's competitive nature, that you can challenge your friends. Go, I found a turtle, can you find a turtle? Post it online and sort of hopefully get a steamroll effect of people wanting to participate. So that was really the concept in a nutshell. So at the time, like I said, we were looking for other ways. How can we make this as easy as possible for people? So we've got the TURT app. We've got an email address dedicated to it. We've got WhatsApp. We've got iNaturalist, which I know Field Naturalist Club members use a lot. We've also put online a Google form. You'll see by and large, WhatsApp is the most popular, it's the most easy. Everyone has it, everyone wants to use it. This is a look at sort of the artwork that the designer did for us. Another thing I wanted to look at was be able to look at the frequency of sightings on dive sites again, right? Because I have that data from my PhD. I know 1 in every 2 dives on average, I'm going to see a hawksbill. That was back in 2007, 2008. So I want to see, has that changed? So instead of just asking for your turtle reports, I am asking divers to log their dives. Tell me about every dive you did, whether you see a turtle or not. So you can tell me, I went to Tobago this weekend, I did 4 dives, and I saw 1 turtle. That gives me that important frequency data. Right, so we launched in March 2023, just after Carnival. Like I said, we did posters, we had social media posts. The marketing consultant had this idea of guerrilla advertising with our model turtle hair that was made by a masked man that you can wear on your head and walk around. And the idea was something big and flashy that you could just walk down the street or in a public area and catch people's attention, and then have people coming to you to ask, what is this about, right? So we did use it a few times, and it did work a little bit on that. It got some weird looks, and we had to maybe sometimes still start the conversation, but it was an opener, So we had Google Ads and so on. Can I ask, by the way, if any of you encountered any ads for this project? Okay, 2, 3. Okay, ads, not me reaching out directly. Okay. All right. So we did some workshops as well. So this was just in October last year. We wanted to reach out to operators in particular. So we had 2 meetings in Tobago. We had a meeting in Chaguaramas with various operators, right? To tell them more about the project, how to participate, and get their feedback and ideas too, and knowledge about the turtles. So we did find that, and I guess the marketing consultant, in their work, found it difficult to really identify and target the key demographic to gear those ads towards. Like online, you can enter age range, location in the country, different things to target people. And there was no clear demographic that seemed to work best. The online challenge didn't really take off how we had hoped, and that's probably on us for not making more of an effort with directly reaching out to different influencers and getting them on board. I think the most success is probably by reaching out directly with some of the key stakeholders and building a bit of a relationship with them and checking in with them. Have you seen anything lately? But it has been hard to maintain that continued interest. We get people sharing a few times and then we don't hear from them for months, right? We've also found that you can find quite a lot just searching social media, different, in phishing groups on Facebook and just searching for keywords and stuff, we're finding reports. So all told so far, we've had roughly 520 reports. Now, when I say reports, this includes people reporting directly to us, but also things that we have just happened to find, or iNaturalist reports that people made anyway and weren't necessarily looking to participate in our project, but they automatically come in, right? So we've up to 300 on iNaturalist. When we started, it was less than 150. So it has gone up quite a bit in that 2 years. As I said, WhatsApp, the most popular avenue for people to actually reach out to us and share. This is the iNaturalist project. The project pulls any reports of sea turtles in Trinidad and Tobago automatically, but because sea turtles are endangered species, we do not get the actual accurate coordinates unless the observer trusts us with coordinates. So that has been one challenge we're facing. Of the 300 observations, roughly half, I actually know the precise coordinates from. The others, they give you just sort of a wide box, right? So a lot of my time as well, I've been messaging people directly on iNaturalist, explaining the project, please participate, please trust us. Right, so we have had all 5 species observed. The majority have been leatherbacks, generally on nesting beaches, adults and hatchlings. But we're getting a good bit of hawksbill and greens, which I am most interested in. I think all the loggerhead and olive ridley are reports from Ryan. So all told, all combined, Ryan is the map man as well. So this is like a density heat map that shows where we've had the most reports coming in. But I'm quite happy to say that we have, got some in this southern half of Trinidad as well. Clearly all around Tobago, little hotspots around the Bonaccord Lagoon and Booker Reef, Charlottesville, down the islands. And these two are probably from nesting beaches, nesting activity at Grand Riviere Matura, right? Yes, thank you for swatting. What about it? So there's been one in Caroni Swamp itself. And I reached out to the person. I said, sure, you didn't see it in Caroni Swamp. I think maybe you made a mistake with your coordinates. And no, he insisted this was exactly where he saw it. He saw 2 green turtles feeding in the swamp. I still thought he was a bit crazy. So next time I went to the swamp, I talked to the boatman who do from Natans, and they confirmed they do see turtles in the swamp, at least in sort of the big open area. And, it's been known from other places. So they're coming in the swamp. Sea turtles, green sea turtles. They may even be eating mangrove seeds and leaves, right? They do that in some places. All right, so we'll do some more maps to show focus on different things. So these are the loggerhead and olive ridley reports. So much fewer than any of the other species, of course. We've got the loggerhead in red, 2 down at Icacus, that includes 1 stranded one. We have olive ridley entanglement down here off of Gaviota. We had stranding in Tobago. We've had hatchlings in Tobago, all right, of both species. But I think what's interesting for me for the loggerheads is how widely spread the loggerheads are around Tobago. I mean, Trinidad. And people don't think of the Gulf of Paria as a place for sea turtles, right? Yes. Yeah, very true, right? So you would think we've had a lot of other sightings along the North Coast. Why not these species? And it comes down to the habitat. Quick question? I don't know. Competition between species for sites? Good question. I don't think so. I'll talk to you more about that after, yeah? All right, so one of the olive ridley sightings, hatching event at Pigeon Point. Pigeon Point, okay? Pigeon Point is actually known for hawksbills, but these would have escaped anybody's attention. They assume they're hawksbills, but they are olive ridleys, right? The other thing I want to show you is looking at the life stages of these animals, right? So I mentioned that we have nesting on the beaches. You're going to see adults nesting, you're going to see babies hatching, and then you're going to see juveniles in the water. And in Tobago, in my past research, hawksbill juveniles were the most abundant. But right now, we're seeing more adults in the water, limited portion of juveniles in the hawksbills, which is shown in pink. And meanwhile, the green turtles, really a lot of dominated by the juveniles. And occasionally we've had some nesting or mating adults in the water. All right, and the change in the hawksbill life stages may be partially, again, the sort of locations that we're getting the sightings from being spearfishers on the north coast of Trinidad, especially, and down the islands, who are near to nesting beaches where these adults may be coming into nest. Right? The green turtle reports this is by life stage. So again, just emphasizing the juveniles and the red cross everywhere, right? We've got them down East Coast, even in the Gulf of Paria as well, all around Tobago. And the little circles will be your adults or possible adults. So it's hard to tell from photos sometimes just how big the turtle is. So we have a category for possible adults. So we have hand mating of the Costa Toco. A couple of points are also not captured here that I know about events because we didn't have an exact location, but I can tell you we have footage of greens mating off the Caribbean coast of Tobago, for example. All right. Right, so a look at some of the green turtle habitat. Again, that picture from Mount Irvine Reef. This would be Macquarie Bay. And these are two from Scotland Bay, down the islands, right? So we've got the paddle grass, that's a type of seagrass, and we've got different types of algae, and you'll just see these sandy beaches with just beds of this algae, and those are where we're seeing some of these hotspots for the green turtles. All right, so I tried to choose some of my favorite sightings to show you guys. This is a little green turtle from Charlottesville. So this would be one of the smallest turtles you're going to see, about a dinner plate or less, just cruising by. That's the juvenile. This is still a juvenile. This is like remember the hatchlings leave the beach and we don't see them for a while. And they come back at about this size. So this is when we say they recruit into the habitat, right? One thing, well, I'll talk about the species identification a bit later, that challenge. All right. Yeah, they will stay, we think, until they mature. So which could be a period of like 10 to 15 years roughly. And they do, from other studies, have quite a small home range of like a kilometer radius. Yeah. This is some drone footage submitted to us from just off of Pigeon Point. I don't think the audio is helpful, so I'm just turning that off. Count how many turtles we've got. Unfortunately, I think I'm missing some at the top, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6. And a relatively small patch, not on the reef, right? Within the reef in shallow, like this is kind of a nylon pool, right? Yeah, so that one was heading off to the top, so it's 6, I believe. Trying to go, okay, right? Now we look at the hawksbills. So like I said, the hawksbills were not so dominated by the juveniles. They were a little more even. So the map's a little cluttered, but you could kind of focus on the green circles or adult females. Most of those are nesting events. Some are turtles in the water that were observed near to nesting beaches. We have some adult males. We have the juveniles and the hatchlings. So the juveniles have been sort of restricted to just a few sightings around Tobago and the north coast, right? Okay, here we've got some footage from Shaka Shikari, which is a known site for hawksbill nesting. So this pair mating just off the south coast, I believe, of Shaka Shikari. And Imran, who reported this, actually had multiple videos during the day, right? So he saw them at one time and he came back nearby 4 or 5 hours later and saw a pair again. And we're confident from the videos that it was the same adult because it had quite a distinctive patch of algae and barnacles on its shell. I can't swear that it's the same female, right? They will be possibly mating with different females around just offshore the beach. Right, and this is an early morning nester at Chef. And I like this video because it just shows you some people would look at this beach and think the turtles can't nest there, right? With all those rocks and stuff. And we've seen them nesting at even more sort of shingly beaches or gravelly beaches with small stones and gravel. They can dig through quite a lot to nest. Yes, they're good climbers. That's, yeah. All right, this is the next one from Mona's. And I believe this is likely an adult female of a nesting beach as well. And this is quite shallow water when there's another part of the video that I think I clipped out, but you could see they didn't have to dive down very far. And this day they saw three turtles quite close together, all quite large hawksbills, probably females. So one of the things that I'm hoping to do, I'll talk about a bit later towards the end, is if we get enough good quality photos and videos, we can identify different individuals, right? From looking at the pattern of the scales, either on their face or on their flippers action. So that will help us go beyond just saying, well, we see turtles a lot in a place, to saying, well, we actually can count the 5 turtles there or the 10 turtles there, and be able to, you know, match back records in subsequent sightings. Here we have North Coast. Notice the large tail, the long tail. So this is an adult male. That is how you distinguish the sexes. When they're juveniles, they all have small tails. So it's only when they're adults that that you can say for sure what sex it is. So there's kind of an iffy period where you've got, if you saw a large hawksbill with no long tail, to say that it's a female or a subadult male is tricky, because it doesn't happen like at an exact size either. This one is a bit, visibility was not great, similar location of the North Coast, but I like it because it's very interesting behavior. We see one adult male hawksbill, then you can see they count the long tail. And watch on your left now, here comes another one. Same long tail, right? So it was 2 adult males, and the diver who reported it, the free diver, he described them circling each other like a dance, right? So this could be some sort of territorial behavior. It could be the battling over access to nesting females around here. All right, so we did, as I mentioned, fisher surveys as well. I didn't get too much into that data here. We're still working on that. Most of the north of Trinidad is covered. We want to get some more done. Just a few fishers at each location. Chatting with them, we have an interview form to find out how often they see turtles, where do they experience bycatch, etc. And some of the patterns we're looking at so far is a lot of them reported bycatch. Now, this is not necessarily that the turtles are dying. A lot of the time they have bycatch and they release the turtle alive. And it's also not happening necessarily very frequently. It's just that most fishermen have experienced at least one occasion of bycatch, and this is lines and nets. Half of them reported a disease called fibropapilloma, and some of them were able to point us to interesting habitat that we didn't know about. Now the dive log data, remember I mentioned 1 and 2 when I did my PhD? So that's almost 0.5, right? When you look at the 161 dives logged with us, only 11 hawksbills were seen. So that gives us a ratio of 0.07 or 0.08 hawksbills per dive, 6 times less in that space of time, from 1 in 2 to 1 in 12 dives. Right, so that's a very concerning result that that I'm watching. I would love to get more dive logs to beef up and strengthen this data. Right, threats were observed among about 57 of the reports we received. Broken down here, the most common being poaching. This is poaching on beaches. This is poaching in the water. We had bycatch, again, both boats and nets and lines. Again, some of them were not killed, right? But I still count it as a threat that they're facing. We had stranded turtles that came up and we were not sure what was the reason, the cause of death. We had fibropapilloma and other signs of disease. We had 1 occasional boat strike, a couple turtles trapped in sargassum. So these are the threats, and I have a map to show sort of the distribution of those main threats, right? So we have the bycatch and the yellow circles everywhere around Trinidad, right? So this is not just leatherbacks as well, by the way. And we have fibropapilloma in Granville, North Coast, Trinidad, and then we have a couple other diseases on the East Coast and Charlottesville. I believe that's fibropapilloma in the Chaguaramas area as well, right? And then poaching. Again, poaching in water and on beaches. So East Coast, down the island, and around Tobago. Right, again, some pictures show a sample bycatch of the leatherback and the gill nets, which we know is a problem during their nesting season. This is an interesting video of a loggerhead somewhere in the Gulf of Paria, I believe close to San Fernando. So they caught it in a net alive and thankfully released it. So this is one of the interesting loggerhead results I've been able to find just by paying attention online, scrolling social media. All right, this another one is from Imran, who some of you know, south of Gaspery, line fishing. And that's audio. Did anyone notice a big tail? You're gonna see it again, but that is an adult male. And the hooks were, I didn't swallow the hook. It looked like the hooks were entangled on this clipper. So they were able, you'll see, he gets it up quite close to the boat and they were able to remove it and release it, more or less unharmed. And I think this is the first time that this has happened to this particular fisher. So, you know, again, it's not happening a lot, but it's still happening enough that it can be a concern. I think there were multiple hooks too on this. Here we've got poaching on the nesting beaches. We see a lot of this, a lot of bones, shell remaining. I think all of these are reports from iNaturalist and one probably from your recent Grand Tac trip. In the sea, this would be a net in Petit Trou Lagoon in Tobago, just to the west of Tobago Plantations, or within Tobago Plantations. That's the problem there. We're seeing nets there a lot, targeting green turtles. But luckily on this occasion, there were 4 turtles spotted alive and released by some Good Samaritans. And this one was reported by the Narantwits in Tobago recently. Found in the water, but clearly butchered and cleaned out. And that's quite a young, small one. This big shell is an adult green turtle, found again butchered on Maracas Beach. It had scuff marks on the shell with that blue paint that you get on the bottom of boats. So we believe it was captured at sea, brought to land, butchered, and the shell abandoned. These 2 little juvenile green turtles were rescued from a net in North Manzanilla area. That's my brother-in-law, Garth, who was involved in that one. And those were thankfully rehabilitated at the El Socorro Center for Wildlife Conservation and released alive. One needed to amputate its flipper, but it was all right. Okay, and we have coastal development threats. All of these pictures are Tobago. So we have these 2 with the turtles are both Tobago plantations. They're, again, those are beaches that you may not look at and think that's a turtle nesting beach, but they get significant numbers right in front of the hotel and even on the south of the point, further closer to Petit Trou. And this picture is Pigeon Point, where we have structures on the beach that may be obstructing the turtles from nesting. This one ended up in the pool, probably because of lights. And then, like you say, kind of climbing up the hills, climbed up some steps, fell in the pool, right? Sargassum, we've seen quite a bit of green hatchlings washing back with the sargassum. So that's interesting because we're not seeing green turtles much on the beach. So are these actually babies that were born here, or were they born somewhere further afield and washing back? Because they do tend to look a little bit bigger than your like fresh from the egg hatchling, right? So we would call them post hatchlings that are washing back. And we've seen this on the East Coast and around Tobago as well. Right, some of the other things we've recorded: boat strike in a marina, entanglement in various lines in a marina. So this is the juvenile green, and this is a fairly large loggerhead. That was during COVID, and Ryan and I went to help check it out. Fibropapilloma is another threat to sea turtles, particularly green turtles. It's a disease that results in these tumor-like growths on the skin, but also internally on their organs. It can block their eyes, it can block their movements, their mouth, and they can get quite emaciated and die. So this is a publication I did with Carla Phillips in Living World Journal some years ago. And this is a picture of a really, really bad case at Granville. Somebody found this turtle just very shallow along the shoreline and took some photos and sent it to SOS Tobago. And that's how we found out about it. But this bird has heavy, big tumors. The vets advise there's nothing that can be done. So it's viral. Yeah, we believe it's a viral disease that can be spread through the population. But what's interesting is there's literature to show that it's more common where the water quality is poor. So it may have somewhat of an immune system thing where your immunity may be weakened by the poor water quality, leaving you more vulnerable to the disease. Some turtles can catch it and recover from it. Others can die from it. So what we need to know is, how common is this happening here? Is it resulting in mortality, or is it, are they able to recover in most cases? That would help us evaluate how much of a concern this one is. So at the time I did that paper with Carla, we had reports of confirmed fibropapilloma on the west, south, and east coast of Trinidad. This is footage from North Coast Trinidad. And you see quite a large lump on this left shoulder of this green turtle, like a big white ball that we believe is fibropapilloma on its shoulder there.
If you cut it off, will it survive?
The vets will do that, but it depends on the severity. It depends if they have it inside of them as well. So I don't advise anybody go and cut it off. But if you see it and report it to us, we will work and get a vet to assess it and see what can be done. If it's small ones, like probably a centimeter, a couple centimeters, more likely to kind of try something locally. We don't have very good facilities locally. Ricardo will talk to you all about his plans to do a turtle hospital, where we could better deal with these events. And these are 4 other strandings coming in through the Marine Mammal Stranding Network that also takes turtle reports. I don't have cause of death on any of these. This is an adult male again, mostly hawksbills there and one green. Right, coming close to the end, one thing I wanted to highlight about people's knowledge about sea turtles is I kept hearing about chicken turtle. Ever since I did my PhD, actually, divers would tell me it has chicken turtle there. And in Tobago, it most often turned out to be hawksbill turtles. In Trinidad, I was finding people showing me greens and saying that's a chicken turtle. So I was very confused. It turns out, I think it's a misunderstanding about the life cycle. So these fishermen and so on are seeing turtles this size and not really anything else. They're not seeing the big ones, they're not seeing the babies, they're just seeing it this size. And they think it's its own unique species that never gets bigger than that. But what is happening from what we know about the life cycle is they reach a certain size and they leave the area, and so they're not seeing it together, right? So you can tell as well, they can, to the untrained eye, the colors, the shell pattern, you may not at a glance be able to tell the difference unless you know what you're looking for. So here you can really see the scutes between the eyes are a key useful thing in these particular species to tell the difference between them. All right, so our upcoming activities. So we do want to continue with the Fisher surveys we're doing, and that's my timer. So I found that the workshops work quite well and so on, and just reaching out directly to key stakeholders. It's something I want to do, I just don't have the time to do as much as I would like. Of course, outreach and education. We still have some funds to look into getting prizes as incentives that we want to advertise on social media. Maybe something like the most dives logged, the best photo, best video, have people vote on them, that kind of thing. We want to do some surveys of our own, explore the foraging habitats, see what is attracting the turtles to the different locations that we've heard about. We've identified one particular location on East Coast Trinidad where there's a lot of juvenile greens very close to shore, and I would like to try an in-water tagging study there. And of course, you know, we've got information now that I want to get it back out there, start communicating our findings back to people who've been participating in the study, as well as more widely. And I mentioned the photo ID, so we want to be, you know, have a database of these images that we can start looking and matching. These are not the same individual, but because I couldn't find, except for, I think Mike and you were at the start at the same day or something, and photoed, I think, the same turtle. But even that was kind of hard to see because of, you know, you need a good close-up and you need the right angle to be able to see the pattern quite well. Right, another platform we want to use is Earth Ranger. This is a free platform available from AI2, which is an artificial intelligence company, I guess, coming out of Microsoft, really, and they really want to work with wildlife management. And they've been doing some great projects in Africa with elephants and all over the world. And they're really great, just completely free. We've had meetings with them. They've designed our platform for us. We've uploaded just the dive sites and stuff so far. And now we have to create our event form that we can start adding the data to. And what's good about it as well, it can automatically pull in the iNaturalist data into this. Right, so then we'll have a really great way to visualize everything all together. So as I close, I just want to remind you to please participate, and please, anytime you see a turtle, let us know about it. Whether you get a picture, no picture, be alive, it could be dead, anything, we would like to hear about it and look at those observations. All right, so I'll just thank the sponsors, Ryan, Janice, who is here, who's been a big help with the data entry and the workshops and everything. So those of you who attended the workshops will recognize her. And Raina from Schreier Enterprises and so on. Of course, all the participants, I know there's several in the audience.